Mr. Chamali, in light of the facts presented before the court today, how do you plead? The bearded man rose from his seat. Silently and slowly he looked forward, making eye contact with the judge. The court's doors burst open violently as several black-clad figures burst in, hurling canisters of tear gas. The man, who was called Mr. Chamali, smiled. I plead guilty, Your Honor. Oh, and you may call me by my chosen name, Mirror Haidist. The man ducked for cover as the gases filled almost the entire room. People screamed and tried to reach for refuge. The few duty policemen went for their weapons and tried to take careful aim, but without a clear line of sight, it was impossible. Before long, they discovered that both the intruders and Mr. Chamali had disappeared from the courtroom. Agents were on their mouthpieces talking to their people. Satellites tracked a red Tesla, heading east. A police ornithopter made a low droning sound as it scoured the motorway. The co-pilot barked into his radio. We found the vehicle, moving to intercept. The ornithopter bore down on the busy freeway. 2 other vehicles pulled up alongside the Tesla. Time to take out the garbage, echoed a deep growling voice on the intercom. The Mirror Haidist had his mask shield covering his face as he rode shotgun. Indeed, let Red Rose deal with them. I'm sure she can handle one lousy ornithopter. One of the vehicles pulled to a stop on the hard shoulder. An oddly dressed female stepped out and continued to stroll casually onto the busy freeway. Car horns sounded as vehicles swerved to avoid her. The 2 piloting the ornithopter glared at the woman. Red Rose concentrated on the green, thorny edges that flanked the busy freeway. The bushes rustled violently, shaking with the movement of some unknown shape that tunneled through scrub and briar. Each stem and twisted vine obeyed her mental command. The 2 men piloting the ornithopter were negligent in their judgment until the thorny tentacles were virtually on top of them. The flying machine lurched. Thorny, spiny creepers moved into place along the fiberglass plating, inching over surfaces, exercising their leafy influence in every crack, loosening rivets, undermining the very structure. The plant kingdom had taken charge. Vines plucked the insect-like appendages from the main fuselage. Red Rose continued standing meditatively, her arms outstretched before her as though casting a dark spell. The thorny brushwood that had the vehicle caught on both sides pulled the ornithopter violently, ripping the fuselage, tearing it in either direction. A loud explosion bloomed over the freeway. Red Rose opened her eyes, resting her arms at her side at last. Well done, Rose, the Mirror Haidist praised as the car sped on. The Tesla moved through the bay doors of an old abandoned factory, and steadily it pulled to a stop. Well, looks like the chickens have come home to roost, said the Mirror Haidist, watching from a balcony. Several men stepped out of the vehicle. One of the passengers was the other Mirror Haidist, the one they had just sprung from the court. Mirror Haidist, announced the man standing on the balcony. Mirror Haidist, addressed the other, looking up. You'll designate me as first, do you understand? The other Mirror Haidist did not say a word. He reserved his answer to a brief nod. Anything to say for yourself? The man looked up from behind his glass visor. The first also had a glass shield covering his face. They were both the same man, more or less. Another man wearing a similar glass visor moved in to join them. Yes, the second chimed in. You've been careless of late. A third iteration of the masked man joined the conversation, appearing from behind a draping tarp. Careless, added a fourth Haidist, appearing on the opposite side of the balcony. He doesn't deserve the name Mirror Haidist. He does the rest of us a huge disservice. Now, play fair, you guys, added a fifth Mirror Haidist. It was as if the man had multiplied and was at the moment pulling some macabre routine. He was only following orders, isn't that right? The liberated man looked up at the 5 other versions of himself and nodded. That's it. I was only doing my job. Sloppy work. Damn sloppy work. There were unforeseen circumstances, the man on the ground responded. Stop right there. I don't wish to hear it, said the first. I trust the authorities confiscated the ampules we asked you to appropriate. How inconvenient. Especially now when we require more samples of the disease. Now our quota requires more planning, more work. Granted, we have more than enough outpatients to harvest the twin golems we need, though not enough of the pure pathogen with which to infect them. Now we need to make further plans and preparations to procure more. The glass-covered face of the Mirror Haidist lowered contritely. I apologize for my failure. I promise I won't let it happen again. See that you don't, replied the first sternly. We need more golem bodies. We need thousands more of these corporeal housings before we can commence and march upon the free world. The 4 other Haidists snapped their heads to face the first. This action appeared much more freakish by the mere fact that it was conducted in unison. There was something robotic, even choreographed in that single collective action. The other 5 were aware of the intricacies of the plan. They also recognized that their signature and lineage originated from multiple realities. They were all the same man, though they did not emerge from the same quantum existence. A long time ago, the first Mirror Haidist fashioned the glass, the mirror mask from the temporal desert sands. Haidist found a way to manufacture glass with magical properties. He wore this visor over his face, and it commenced, boring a hole through the membrane of alternate realities. Ah, but there was an unforeseen side effect. All these men and women who possessed his life signature were torn, ripped from their mortal bodies, later to be trapped in the mind of the first Mirror Haidist. And there they languished, thousands upon thousands of voices, calling out to be free. In the end, the first Mirror Haidist managed to silence them all with a promise, a pledge that he would discover a way to separate them all and give them back their autonomy. All those that are still locked away up here, he continued to explain, pointing to his head. They need freedom, disconnection, and the more they stay locked away in my brain, the more we all suffer. The first placed both his hands on the railing before him. I need not suffer, he continued. And to be brutally honest, you no longer need to suffer. You have your body, you have autonomy. There are thousands still, a billion versions of you who scream to get out. So don't frag it up for them. Think about your goal. Consider all our goals. All of us are the same, and we demand success. Yes, Mirror Haidist. Do you agree this was lenient, Mirror Haidist? The first looked at the second. The second looked back and nodded. I will concede yes, Mirror Haidist. He's one of us and does not deserve capital punishment. What sayeth you, Mirror Haidist? And he turned to the 5th. Mirror Haidist, I'm in total agreement with you. And the 5th turned once again to the first. The first was pleased they understood. Good, then we have a consensus. We must plan our next move. We have to procure more of the disease, farm the byproduct. We must manufacture sacks for the development of our golems. They will soon grow, multiply into an army. Our master can use the said army to fulfill his plan, his dream of world domination. With the ranks of the Mirror Haidist to decide, there will be no one to prevent our timely conquest. No one, do you hear? The Mirror Haidist whom they had liberated from the courts, let us refer to him as the 6th, was escorted away for briefing. The first one looked down from the balcony. No one could see his expression at that moment, but he was feeling a certain measure of doubt regarding his subordinate selves. And in truth, yes, they were all subordinate to him, even though they were all alternate versions. Each one was unique. Could they not all be turned into obedient soldiers, trusted to obey? Hours passed, and the 6th remained, temporarily removed from duty. A few miles away, the 6th stood in a remote location, a typically rural area. Mirror Haidist wasn't wearing his uniform or a glass visor as he waded off-road. He knew that the individual he intended to meet would be along any moment. Soon enough, the 6th Haidist noticed someone approach. Looking sharply in the direction where he heard a snapping twig, the 6th witnessed a young male personage walking toward him. It was a muse. There was no doubting it, the perfection of his skin, the luster of his eyes. They appeared almost elven in their radiance. You have the items, the muse asked. The 6th crouched, placing a rather large pouch on the ground. Removing the leather cord, the Mirror Haidist rolled the contents out before the inquisitive muse. These are the components you asked for. 2 holographic filters, a high-frequency micro camera, 2 identity eye patch filters, and a false thumbprint latex stamp. Should be everything you need. I thank you, said the muse after a pause. Your contribution today has not gone unnoticed. The 6th merely looked at him for a moment. I'm not doing this for your war, he said at last. I've spent centuries locked inside that man's head, disembodied, disenfranchised, angry. Now, I am free. I'll be damned if I'm going to let him control me any longer. The muse looked at the man reflectively and said, Ah, yes, seems to be the hardest problem for you mortals. I am not mortal, replied the 6th. I haven't been thus for thousands of your years. This golem form I inhabit is genetically modified to withstand the ravishes of time. They augment all the golems in this fashion. It makes us less dependent on the world's resources if our bodies, Our internal needs are met, independent of the natural world. Yes, and I would imagine that would make things insufferable for you, for it is gratitude that holds you to the shackles of the past. To imagine giving up everything that makes you dependent to a point, only to realize that the old abstracts trap you even more. Honor, loyalty, simply a form of mental coercion. I harbor no such loyalties, replied the sixth. I offer no legion to the gods or their half-baked solutions for humanity. Take these tools I've given you and do something meaningful. Help the humans break their shackles and prevent fate. The muse took the pouch and loosened his wings. The sixth felt a sudden weight press hard upon his conscious thoughts. He watched the muse become a distant speck in the sky. Fear spread over his reasoning, peppering his mind with hard questions. Questions like how much did they know? The other alternate versions of himself, were they aware of the sixth's duplicity? Could the first Haidist keep track of his movements? Hard to say, but the fear grew more palpable with the possibility. If they thought, or at least suspected the sixth of sabotage, then it was likely they would pump him for information, then later bring him to confess, after which he would likely receive punishment. The other 5 would offer him to the one creature, the only god on this planet powerful enough to serve him to oblivion, the jaws of the ancient deity, the name of which he dared not speak. But there was something he feared more than death, more than the jaws that bite, the maw that rends. He stressed the long living end, the living death of never reaching his potential. That is what he truly feared. The Mirror Haidist, better known as the Sixth, realized that his return to base was likely a mistake. But he wasn't like the others. He wasn't willing to compromise or shirk responsibility. He was their mirror opposite, practically the black sheep of the family. But he had his self-respect, something most of his other versions had lost. The very next day, word leaked that someone had broken into the facility. 3 people had entered under false pretenses. No one could identify them. They slipped through the net and had strolled right in, took some incriminating footage and managed to walk out without so much as raising the alarm. However, one of the sensors placed deep inside the facility managed to detect something curious. The post data revealed that the intruders had been wearing holographic filters, military grade. This military graded equipment, in the hands of these mystery infiltrators, pointed to a clear fact. There was a snitch or a spy in their midst. It was clearly evidenced by the appropriation or acquisition of technologies that belonged to the Archons exclusively. The first Mirror Haidist reviewed the data immediately. These infiltrators had taken camera footage. Highly sensitive actions had been videotaped. Of what, exactly? What had been filmed? Ah, yes, people suffering unnecessarily, not forgetting the doctors, all conducting their illegal experiments. There were various different stages of maturation. Cocoons, as large as people had they been sitting in fetal positions, lay upright and side by side. These husks that were being farmed were simply the byproduct of this fatal disease, a sickness that left its victims changed and altered. And from their husks emerged twinned golems, emanating like blank fetuses from a womb. Would someone use this footage to force fear and leverage, or would they use it to warn the world of what was going on? There was only one thing to do: burn the facility to the ground, deny all knowledge, find the spy in their midst and destroy him. In no time at all, the sixth was placed in a small room and was questioned. He sat at a table as the first remained, pacing slowly, adopting his good cop, bad cop routine. He was the bad cop, and the second presumably was good. The good was seated at the opposite end of the table. "I want to know how these kids were able to infiltrate this facility," demanded the first. The second sat there and looked at the sixth. "You don't have to answer any of these questions. You have the right to representation." "He has a right, does he?" "Yes." The first looked down at the second. The first Mirror Haidist had lost patience by this time. "Don't you want to know how 3 infiltrators managed to sweep through here with their espionage kits? Just waltz in and walk out with video evidence? If you don't think this sixth is responsible, this simulacrum who calls himself Mirror Haidist, then you're a fool." For a brief moment there was silence. The 2 individuals remained, staring at the interrogated man. "He's right," the sixth owned up at last. "I'm tired of the BS. I'm sick of this plan you thrust down my throat. And look, it's not even my skin. Not my throat. These are not my eyes. Do you think I'm speaking with my mouth right now, my true body? My corporeality? I lost that centuries ago. I lost it when I was sucked out of my universe. My reality." He turned to look at the second. The first leant forward over the table, pressing his hands down on its polished surface. "That's all we need," he said. "Prepare the spirit technology. We're going to remove your undeserving spirit from your golem body. We'll give the body to a more deserving Mirror Haidist, after which we will consign your spirit to the Amalzani, our frog goddess. She will deal with you." The sixth rose. The very name of that creature was enough to set his teeth on edge and send a chill down his spine. "We must make an example of you." An hour had shifted. Preparations were made. The first Mirror Haidist stood on a gantry, a bluff that looked out over a sacrificial pit. This room remained the residence of oblivion. He peered down at the pit and acknowledged the small glass vial in his hands. The massive gaping hole seethed with an undulation of energy. The energy formed a pattern, appearing like a giant mouth that closed, only to open again hungrily. Amalzani awaited the pleasure of her sacrifice. The first Haidist opened the glass vial in his hands. What came out was the essence of the sixth, disembodied. In this form, he could not speak, nor utter any final words. "Go to your destruction! Go!" The essence fell like a heavy vapor, down to where the monstrous maw waited. There was a slight fizzle and a crackle in the air, as the spirit lay impotent to prevent final absorption. The vapor, which represented the thoughts and experiences of one man, descended slowly into the energy sinkhole. Those memories, that soul which had made him unique, all destroyed. "It is done," the second stated. "Good. Now I don't ever want to resort to this kind of action again. I trust you'll agree." "Yes, Mirror Haidist." "Good. Then let us leave this place of desolation." "And Mirror Haidist?" "Yes, Mirror Haidist. We have a world to dominate. Don't you agree?"